Well, let's get talking now. Like every other sector of the economy facing tough times at the moment, the aviation industry has not been spared as the sector is being immersed with different operating challenges that have called to question the ease of doing business in Nigeria. While manufacturers and small scale businesses are complaining about the rising cost of production occasioned by the hike in the price of diesel, scarcity of forex, among others, domestic airlines are almost being swallowed up by the myriads of challenges threatening their continuous existence, going by the astronomical increase in the price of aviation fuel, which used to be sold as low as 300 naira as of February this year, but has now risen to more than 800 naira in some cases in this month. The crisis and the failure of the authorities to act promptly has started taking its negative toll on the local airlines, with the oldest of the airlines, Aero Contractors, announcing its decision to temporarily shut down its scheduled operations. With the contending issues in place, the big question begging for answer now is what is the outlook for the sector in the next few months, or of course 1 year, if there is no lasting solution to these challenges. To provide answers to this question and of course all that development across the aviation industry, I'm being joined live in our Lagos studios is an industry expert who is a managing partner of Aglo Aviation Support Services Limited, Mr. Tayo Ojuri. Good afternoon, Mr. Ojuri. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yes, you've been out for some time, but it's good to have you back. All of the conferences and all of that. We had you in from Egypt when you were in, but immediately I saw this news yesterday, first before this, the final one today that NCAA is now slamming down, I think late yesterday,
yes.
And that will be implemented immediately. Yes. It calls for worry. With all of the challenges we've seen and talked about, were you expecting this to happen so quickly for some airlines to start saying they're suspending flights because of these challenges?
Yes, two questions there. It's actually very, it's a good idea that what NCAA did, because it's actually been proactive rather than what the normal Nigerian reaction of being reactive when there's an issue. And it's been proactive in the sense that in aviation, safety for us, it's paramount. It covers every other thing. So when an airline is unable to meet its financial and economic obligations to its vendors, and it actually, after the audit, it felt it was not right because it would impact on the safety and operations of the airline. So it's better to suspend them indefinitely until they put all their ducks in a row. But we saw this coming, to the other part of that question. We saw this coming because pre-COVID, we had some struggles, or the airline industry in Nigeria had some struggles. So COVID just made that worse situation. The sneeze became a very terrible situation. With COVID, it actually went worse, and then we came live. After coming live after COVID, now we had issues of Jet A1 and the Russia-Ukraine war make it worse, whereby the unavailability of forex to meet the needs of flight operations became a huge issue. And this is what we're seeing now, but it's going to be a real issue in months to come. We've seen specifically we've seen Ibom Air release the press release 2 days ago that they're actually going to, passengers should brace up because they're actually going to experience lots of delays due to lack of Jet A1. They're going to actually be able to shut down some routes. So we're going to see that happen over the year. But it's nothing new. It's a trend. I've looked at this over the last 20 years, whereby it's an aviation norm, whereby we see a cyclical boom and a bust. But what we should have done, knowing that this will come, was to have gotten ready for it.
Talking about getting ready for it, we saw support then from various governments trying to form of bailout, or do we call it then, some handouts to some of these airlines. And many analysts came up that time and said, well, like a drop in the ocean, was so little, talking about what the aviation sector would really require. But looking at that, what more would government have done, or what more would have been done to address that situation? And if other airlines go through this financial and economic health audit, do you think many of them will scale through?
I cannot speak for NCAA, and I don't see the books of the airlines.
Okay.
But what we should say is, yes, they got some what we call um, some help from the government during COVID, but it was a global phenomenon. Most of the airlines got help from the government. But after COVID, what now happened? They did actually not re-strategize, because the challenge is, look at, if you actually have to do a comparative analysis, after COVID, now globally, even let's go to Europe, most of the airlines are having huge capacity issues across Europe, whereby there are lots of delays, human capacity is unavailable, lots of lineups, lots of delays. So what we actually should look at in this instance is the fact that how are the airlines positioned to work? What they should have actually looked at is restructuring to meet the new operations. Restructuring in the sense that, yes, they are not able to finance operations with lack of supply of forex from central bank, which is the main source of forex to meet the operational needs, either from training, airport parts, airport lease, airport spares. You actually could look at the alternative, which is actually looking for technical partners or strategic partners abroad. That would help with your foreign direct investment. That would actually help with your structural economics of scale. But obviously, we have our intrinsic peculiarities for the airline operators. So that's been a challenge for inflow. And that's what is really biting them in the operations, and biting them in the behind now. Because now we're going to see a lot of other airlines, because they are all going through the same pain. AON actually released a press, which is the Airline Operators of Nigeria. They released a press release in the last day or two and said this is a prevalent issue across the airline. So unfortunately, who's next?
That's it. That's the big question. Who's next? The aviation thing, it seems it's beyond us. It's like a global issue. We're feeling the heat thanks to the Russian-Ukraine crisis, and that heat is what we are feeling here. Hiking energy prices across board. So I don't know, because for PMS, you see government intervening one way or the other, NNPC doing one or two things. But NNPC is saying, no, we're not going to intervene when it comes to aviation fuel. Central Bank, I don't think they're ready to also intervene, because I thought they were all at this board meeting where the House of Representatives called all of them to come speak around this. So I'm looking at it. It's like we're almost helpless when it comes to this situation of aviation fuel. What do you think? Is there any silver bullet anywhere?
We're not helpless. Aviation is key to the economic growth. We're very good, we're vital catalyst for growth and even for movement.
Yeah.
And the alternatives are not, they're not available. They're available, but they're not as fast, efficient, and nimble, just like aviation is. But yes, when this started earlier in the year, the House of Reps, along with NNPC, offered the airlines some grace of 450 naira per liter for 3 months. But it's diesel and Jet A1 has been liberalized. So it's not
just like diesel, just like kerosene.
Exactly, as they liberalized. So they cannot fix that price.
Yep.
And the Jet A1 operators as well have to go to the market to buy forex.
Yep.
And forex has been fluctuating over time. So you're now seeing Jet A1 that has been at 200, 300, like you rightly posted earlier, now over 800, and more ex-Lagos. So where we have this challenge, we don't see any solution. You do ask a very pivotal question. How do we move on from here? It's just it's either the airlines, some school of thought are saying, let them come together, there's strength in numbers. But my challenge with coming together, which is the merger and acquisition function, is the fact that most of these airlines came up based on different models. So with the merger and acquisition, there's going to be a challenge in that option, but it's a possibility.
Great one. Now let's move on. It's around summer and the movement, all of that, and this is, of course, a global issue again. Do you think there is that capacity to be able to move people from place to place, particularly at this time with the ongoing war?
The war started in February,
Yeah.
and we're nimble in aviation, whereby all the movement has been moved out over Russia. So with that, that's not an issue. It's just the fact there is now the airlines from Asia to Europe have to go through a longer route. So that's a challenge, and then you're spending more money.
More money.
It's a global issue. I realize that every airline from the forecast looking towards the end of the year, they're spending more on fuel. So they have that challenge as well. So that's one part. The other forefront issue that is affecting global airlines, especially in Europe, even North America, is human capacity. Yes, COVID happened. We did not envisage the pickup of people wanting to travel for summer like we're experiencing globally. So now what are we seeing? Lots of demand for travel and less supply from human capacity, from aircraft that were packed that needs to be brought. The pilots are not there. The schedule is not availability of schedule, where you have to even bring ground handlers from your home station to other stations to operate. So what is that challenge? You now see KLM, and you see a country like Netherlands cutting capacity for KLM from 550 flights to 450,000. So you're cutting capacity. You're seeing British Airways, especially even to Nigeria, cutting their frequency even to Nigeria. So you're seeing that happen, especially from Europe. So that's going to affect the price and the number of people that can travel, because you now have fewer flights, and you actually, with the fewer flights, you now have these challenges as well. The inconvenience is layered on that. So we're going to have a very challenging summer for travelers. It's not going to be the most convenient.
We also saw runway maintenance at a time here. I think looking at safety, that is very, very important. But at this time, where there are lots of issues on ground, what do you think? What effect or what impact has that also had on operations generally?
Well, that runway at the domestic is long overdue. Because, yes, it's long overdue, because long overdue in terms that they, ever since the last 5-10 years, there could not be nighttime operations on that runway. So if there's bad weather, everybody had to go onto the international to land. So with that, it's better they're fixing it, which would help in the long run. But now the airlines are swallowing the bitter pill. They've actually made these concerns made to the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria. And the Federal Airports of Nigeria did give an update and said, yes, they're still constructing. This is how far we've gone. We understand your pain, because they actually land at the international and taxi to domestic, which is huge cost. If you figure out that domestic cost of taxing from international, it's huge cost to these domestic airlines. And they're already grappling over so much burden, financial burden. So the faster FAN is able to actually manage this project efficiently, the better for the airlines, because it's going to just make them something better. And it's all about optimal efficiency of the operation.
IATA came up sometime last week to say about $700 million could be lost to African aviation space, considering what we have. But I'm even looking at what happens to support services at the aviation industry when all of this is happening. What is happening to that? That is where the jobs too are. What is playing out around that end?
Let's look at it. The foundation is globally, there is inflation.
Yep.
You did mention that we're experiencing inflation too in Nigeria. It's affecting bread, cost of bread. Now, let's actually superimpose that to the aviation sector. So, aviation is a function of disposable income. With inflation, it's affecting the cost of operations. Now, the cost of tickets will go up. The cost of services from ground handlers, from in-flight service operators, from every listening, that ecosystem would go up. Now, it's going to affect the cost of tickets, because it's going to affect the service providers as well. So what is going to happen now, even with more airlines going out, it's going to affect job losses, and people are now, the airline industry, not able to increase the salaries for the workers. So with that, it's going to be a very challenging environment But like you said, data over the last 15, 20 years has shown us it's a cyclical bust and boom. With the cyclical bust and boom, it's again, the social economic factors actually affect us as well. So with that, it's just that this is what we've gone through. The Iran-Iraq war happened. The same thing in 2008, financial challenges globally happened. So what are we now going to do for the airlines to reposition, re-strategize, cut routes, look at their equipment, look at their staff, and they're even more functional. And that's where you actually look at the automation of their processes. And with the automation of the processes, they're going to go further. But obviously, in all of this, safety and being customer-centric goes a long way.
Very importantly, let's wrap up this discussion. Every time I have you in the studio, I always like to wrap up this way because we always see these projections from IATA, from all of the agencies, even the Nigerian air carrier, the carrier, we're expecting that to also come on board. Yes. Minister is still very hopeful that that will happen before the end of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. But what is your reprojected outlook considering the issues we have at hand?
I would say it's not going to happen. Why? Because, well, they and this is my personal opinion. Yeah. What I see is looking at this data. Farnborough is happening at the moment, which is a major air show. With the Farnborough happening, we are looking at how many people actually are available to give in funds and funding for this aircraft. But they seem to have actually gotten all this process done. But they've not actually made us aware how much investment has come into this process. But again, what we look at the reality of where we are in Nigeria, we're already on the last lap of this administration. Politics has started, or politicking has started. So that's going to affect all that process, and it might delay that go-live process of the Air Nigeria project.
It's a good way to leave it. I must thank you so much for your time. You coming directly to the studio. We really appreciate this. I've been speaking to Mr. Tayo Ojuri there. He is the managing partner of Aglo Aviation Support Services Limited. Thank you so much for your time on the show.
It's always a pleasure.
Oh, right there.